Have you ever found yourself sitting across from a man, maybe at church, at a cafe, even in the waiting room at the doctor's office, and for a moment, you caught his eye? Not just a glance, not something accidental, but something that lingered a little longer than expected. In that moment, you felt a flicker of energy you haven't felt in years. A question might have crept up in your mind. Was that just a friendly look, or was there something more behind it? Let me tell you something that might surprise you. The eyes speak volumes, especially as we get older. And as women, we're not imagining it. That subtle shift in his gaze, that hesitation, that quiet intensity, it's real. Men, especially men in their 60s, 70s, and beyond, may not always say what they're feeling out loud. But their eyes will always betray the heart. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. You see, understanding these silent signals can help you feel more confident, more seen, and more in control of your connections, whether you're dating again, rekindling a spark in your marriage, or simply curious about the energy you still attract. Because you do attract energy. Don't let anyone tell you that a woman's beauty fades after 60. It changes, yes. It matures. But it never fades. In fact, it deepens. And men notice that. So today we're going to explore something a little playful, a little meaningful, and maybe even a little revealing. 6 common gazes men give women, and what those gazes actually mean. Let's start with a look that's gentle, often underestimated, but full of emotion. I call it the quiet admiration gaze. You might notice this when a man is looking at you during a conversation, but not saying much. His eyes soften. He watches you as you speak, sometimes tilting his head slightly. He's not trying to impress you. He's just present. Fully present. This is the look of a man who's appreciating not just how you look, but how you carry yourself. He notices the way your voice rises when you're passionate about something. He sees how your hands move when you talk. He's drawn in, not because you're performing, but because you're being fully yourself. I once had a dear friend named Carol, a widow in her early 70s, who shared with me how she met someone at her local community center. He never said anything flirty, never tried to charm her with compliments. But every time she spoke in their group discussions, she'd catch him looking at her. Not in a way that made her uncomfortable, but in a way that made her feel seen. He looked at me, she told me one day, like I was still worth listening to, like my thoughts mattered. And that, dear friend, is what that look is all about. Quiet admiration. It's subtle, but powerful. Don't brush it off. If you notice it, give yourself permission to accept it. You're still captivating, more than you know. Now let's talk about another gaze that's a little more intense and a little harder to ignore. The fixed, curious stare. This one's a little bolder. It often happens when a man is trying to figure something out about you. You catch him looking at you, and unlike the warm, listening gaze, this one feels like he's studying you. Like he's wondering, who is she really? You might see this across a room, maybe in the produce aisle, maybe at a family gathering where someone brought along a single friend, and when your eyes meet his, he doesn't look away right away. He holds it, just long enough for you to feel something stir. This gaze is about intrigue, curiosity, sometimes attraction, yes, but not always in the obvious way. It's often a man asking himself silently, what's her story? And trust me, at our age, a woman's story is her power. You've lived, you've loved, you've grieved, you've rebuilt. That quiet dignity. Men notice it, especially the ones who have walked through fire themselves. The mistake many women make is assuming this kind of look is accidental, that it doesn't mean anything. But I'll tell you this, most men past a certain age don't waste their attention. If he's looking at you that way, it means you've made an impression. You've stirred something in him, whether he understands it or not. Now I know what you might be thinking, but I don't look the way I used to. My friend, Let me remind you, no one does. But there is a kind of beauty that only arrives with time. A presence, a grace, a quiet fire in the eyes. That's the kind of beauty this gaze responds to. You might feel tempted to look away quickly when it happens. But I invite you to try something different next time. Meet the gaze. Hold it, just for a heartbeat longer than feels comfortable. Smile, gently. You're not committing to anything. You're simply allowing yourself to be seen. And sometimes, that one moment of connection, the silent exchange of two people who have lived full lives, is worth more than all the small talk in the world. Let me share something personal here. A woman I met recently, Elaine, age 68, told me about a man she kept seeing at her local diner. Every Sunday, he'd come in just after her, sit 2 booths away, and read the paper. At first, she thought nothing of it. But then she noticed. Every time she looked up from her book, she'd catch him looking at her. Never in a pushy way. Just watching, noticing. After a few weeks, she decided to smile at him. Just a simple smile. That one moment turned into a conversation, and eventually, a deep friendship. And who knows? Maybe more. That's the power of a gaze. It's a bridge. And at our age, we deserve to cross as many bridges as we want, with confidence, with joy, and without apology. Let's continue, because there's another look we need to talk about. It's playful, teasing, and sometimes it catches you completely off guard. You know the one. When a man gives you that twinkle-eyed glance, almost like a boy who's just pulled off a little joke, or thought of something a bit mischievous. This gaze is about lightness, humor. It's often accompanied by a half smile or even a wink. It's not always romantic, but it is engaging. It's his way of saying, I enjoy your company. You bring out something fun in me. And oh, how important that is. At this stage in life, we've all known sorrow. We've faced health scares, lost loved ones, watched the world change. But joy, playful, simple joy, is still something we're allowed to have. And sometimes it comes in the form of that spark in someone's eyes. If a man looks at you this way, lean into it. Laugh. Play along. Let yourself remember what it feels like to flirt with life a little. You're not too old. You're exactly the right age to enjoy that spark. Because that's what life is made of in the end. Not just the big events, but the tiny moments. The glances. The glimmers. The little reminders that someone sees us, wants to connect, and maybe, just maybe, wants to know us better. Let's keep going. There are still more stories to explore, more signals to uncover, and more reasons to lift your chin, soften your gaze, and say to the world, I still see you too. There's something incredibly comforting about being seen, not in the way we're seen in our youth, for how we dress or how smooth our skin is, but for our essence, for the woman we've become after all these years. And that's exactly why this next kind of gaze can be so powerful. It's what I call the protective gaze. You'll recognize it when it happens. Maybe you're walking through a parking lot and you feel a set of eyes watching you. Not in a threatening way, but almost like someone is silently making sure you're okay. Or maybe you're at a family gathering and one of the older men in the room keeps glancing your way when conversations get too loud, too fast. His eyes checking in on you, steady and calm. This gaze says, I'm watching out for you. It may not come with words. In fact, it rarely does. But the intention is clear. It's the look of a man who wants you to know you're not alone. That if anything were to go sideways, he'd step in. And for many women, especially those who have been on their own for a while, this gaze can be both unfamiliar and deeply touching. We've been conditioned to be strong, independent, self-sufficient. And we are. But let's be honest, every now and then it feels good to know someone's quietly watching your back. Not to control you, not to take over, but simply to be present, steady, and dependable. A woman named Janine once told me about a neighbor she barely knew, an older man who always seemed to appear out of nowhere when she was struggling with her trash bins or carrying groceries. He never said much, but she started to notice the way he'd look at her, direct, calm, steady. Like he was saying, "I see you struggling, but I know you can handle it. I'm just here in case you don't want to." That kind of gaze is rare, but when you get it, you never forget it. Now here's the thing. Sometimes we get so used to doing it all ourselves that we don't know how to receive that kind of care. But when you recognize it, take a breath. Let yourself feel what it's like to be seen in that way. It doesn't make you weak. It means you're worthy of someone else's attention. You always have been. Let's move to a gaze that's different, more hesitant, more uncertain, but no less meaningful. I call it the stolen glance. This is the look that comes and goes like a shadow. You catch it in a moment, but when you turn to meet it, it's gone. He's looked away, quickly, almost like he didn't mean for you to notice. Now don't mistake this for disinterest. Quite the opposite. This is often the gaze of a man who's drawn to you, but unsure of how to approach. Maybe he's been hurt before. Maybe he's worried he'll come across the wrong way. Or maybe, just maybe, you take his breath away more than he expected. The stolen glance is often repeated. You'll catch it more than once. And each time, there's a tiny bit more courage in it. A longer pause. A softer gaze. If you notice this happening, you hold a little power, because you have the chance to ease his worry, to gently invite him in without a single word. I remember one woman, Evelyn, telling me about a man at her local coffee shop who would always sit across the room but never speak. Week after week, he'd glance at her while pretending to read the paper. She began to smile whenever she caught his eye, and eventually, after nearly 2 months, he walked up to her table with shaking hands and asked if he could sit down. "I never thought I'd have butterflies at 72, she laughed. But I did. There's a kind of magic in that kind of eye contact. It's quiet. It's tentative, but it's real. And it speaks to the fact that connection doesn't age. Desire doesn't fade. Sometimes all it needs is a tiny, kind invitation. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, there's a look that is anything but tentative. It's bold, intentional, steady. This is the gaze that stops you in your tracks. It's not playful or curious, it's electric. It's what I call the "I want you" look. You know it when it happens. It's the moment a man looks at you with eyes that don't waver. There's no flinching, no glancing away. It's not about lust alone. It's about decision. This is the look of a man who has already imagined what it might be like to stand close to you, to speak softly to you, to share a moment that goes beyond polite conversation. It's powerful. And yes, it can be disarming, especially if it's been a long time since someone looked at you that way. But let me say this as clearly as I can. You are still desirable. You are still magnetic. And if a man looks at you like that, it is not because of pity or nostalgia or wishful thinking. It is because you still carry a light within you, and he sees it. I spoke once with a woman named Mary, a retired nurse in her late 60s. She said she hadn't been looked at with desire in over a decade, until she started volunteering at a veterans group. One man, a few years younger than her, would always hold her gaze just a bit too long during meetings. "At first I thought maybe my lipstick was smudged," she joked. "But then I realized, no, he's just hungry for connection. And somehow, I was what he wanted." Let that sink in. You might be exactly what someone's been looking for. And that gaze, that bold, open look, is their way of telling you. But here's the secret. You don't have to respond with anything but the truth. If you feel drawn to him, let your eyes speak back. If you're not interested, a kind smile and a gentle nod can still honor the moment. Because the goal isn't to invite every gaze in. It's to recognize your own power in being seen. So many of us have gone years, decades even, without being looked at in a way that makes our hearts flutter. But that doesn't mean it's gone. That doesn't mean it's too late. There's something deeply healing about a man's eyes meeting yours with kindness, with care, with a hint of spark. And no matter how old we get, that feeling never grows tired. We still have one more gaze to explore, and it's one that might surprise you, because it's not always obvious. But it's there, and it speaks volumes when you learn how to recognize it. Let's keep going. You've come this far, and there's more truth and beauty waiting just ahead. There's one gaze we haven't talked about yet, and it may be the most overlooked of them all. It's not intense like the "I want you" look, not tentative like the stolen glance, and not as steady as quiet admiration. In fact, it might seem like nothing at first. But if you look a little closer, you'll realize it carries a deep, unspoken respect. I call it the reverent gaze. This is the look a man gives you when he sees more than your face, more than your figure, more than your laugh or your walk. He sees your journey, your strength, your calm, your grace. He sees the years behind your eyes and doesn't look away, not because he's curious, but because he's moved. Maybe it's a widower looking at you at a support group meeting. Maybe it's an old friend watching you dance at your granddaughter's wedding. Or maybe it's a stranger on a park bench who happens to notice the way you sit so peacefully, like someone who has weathered storms but is no longer shaken by the wind. It's a different kind of gaze, not filled with desire, not clouded by nervousness or infatuation. It's full of reverence, a kind of awe, a wordless whisper that says, period. I respect what you've become, and you deserve that. We all do. Because by the time we reach this age, we are no longer here to impress. We're here to inspire. We are no longer competing with youth. We are defining maturity. And let me tell you, there is something magnetic about a woman who knows who she is, who walks into a room not needing to be validated, but simply open to connection. When a man gives you that reverent look, he may never say a word, but his eyes will. And if you meet his gaze with grace, with a quiet nod, a gentle smile, you just might light a fire in someone who thought he was long past feeling anything new. So where does all this leave us? With truth. And with a simple, powerful reminder. The way a man looks at you can tell you more than words ever could. And you don't need to be 25 or wear the right perfume or dye your hair a certain color to receive that kind of attention. You already hold everything you need, right here, in your presence, in your eyes, in your life. You don't need to chase these looks. You don't need to pretend or perform. All you need to do is notice. Notice when someone sees you. Notice how you feel. And notice how you want to respond. Because connection doesn't depend on age. It depends on awareness, on courage, on showing up every day with your heart still open to possibility. And if you've spent years feeling invisible, or like your season for love or attention or intimacy has passed, let me gently say, it hasn't. You're not invisible. You're just surrounded by people who maybe don't know how to truly see. But some do, and some will. And when they do, you'll feel it. In the eyes. That's where everything begins. Not in big declarations or grand gestures. In the stillness of a glance. In the courage to meet someone's eyes and say without words, I'm here, and I still matter. And so I want to leave you with this. The next time a man looks at you in a way that makes your heart pause, even for a moment, don't second guess it. Don't talk yourself out of it. Don't assume it means nothing just because the world hasn't taught us to value these quiet, late-in-life connections. Look back. Smile. Let yourself be fully present in that moment. And maybe nothing will come of it. Or maybe it will turn into a cup of coffee, a gentle friendship, a spark, or even a love that feels better than anything you've ever known. You've earned every wrinkle, every silver strand of hair, every scar, seen and unseen. And with that, you've earned the right to be seen, not just politely, but deeply. To be admired, desired, respected, and loved. So keep your eyes open. Stay open-hearted. And when you walk into a room, do so knowing that you carry something beautiful. The kind of beauty that doesn't need to shout. It simply radiates. And someone, somewhere, is going to notice. Probably with a gaze. If any of these gazes felt familiar to you, or if you've ever had a moment that made you feel seen in a way you didn't expect, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. Even just writing the word noticed is a way to say, yes, I felt that too. And if you enjoyed this video and want more conversations like this, ones that honor your wisdom, your presence, and your heart, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe to this channel, Strong Elderly Life. Here we believe that every stage of life is worthy of joy, growth, and meaningful connection. So here's to you, to the moments you still have, to the people you're yet to meet, to the man who might already be watching you with quiet interest, and to the woman you've become, the one who still turns heads, not because she tries, but because she simply is. Here's to living your best life, at any age. Take care of yourself, and as always, keep those eyes and your heart wide open.